Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Make sure to hit that subscribe button. I would love to see you stick around. In today's video, I am having a guest on my channel. So of course, everything in this video is for entertainment purposes only and just my or Sarah's opinions. As I said, Sarah is going to be the guest on my channel today. If you have seen the Dr. Phil episode that I was on, Sarah was also a guest. She was the person who went before me, who spoke about her experience in a cult for 9 years. We're going to be going over a little bit more of her story. So we're going to go a little bit more in depth because obviously, when we're on the Dr. Phil show, there's only so much that we can say because of time constraints. We were asked not to use the names of the cults or the companies or anything like that when we went on the show. So today, because I have never heard about this cult before, Sarah is going to name the cult, talk about her experience, talk about any kind of backlash that she has gotten after speaking out. Honestly, after hearing her story a little bit further, she has spoken about it a lot on her channel. She was also in a docuseries. All of this will be linked below, in addition to all of her social media, and her small business will also be linked below. Her Etsy store is so freaking cute. I actually just this morning bought 2 pieces from her store. Which brings me to, at the end of the video, she'll talk about this, but she said that my viewers will get a percentage off if they use the code 1111. So it's the word ELEVEN and then 11. So the number comes after the word. All of this will be linked below. But today she's going to talk about all of that kind of stuff. And honestly, when I was hearing her story, when she was talking about the backlash that she got, it reminded me of fair gaming within Scientology. That's the things that she said people came out with, allegedly. These are all accusations against her, but the things that they came out with and said all of these horrible things to try and tarnish her name and her image and everything because she's speaking out. It is so scary and it is extreme. This is something that I think is important for everyone to listen to. I think it's very important for everyone to hear Sarah's story more in depth. Like I said, everything will be linked below: her channel, her social media, her Etsy shop, the docuseries that she was in. At the time of this video, when it's going to be posted, it's going to be Sarah's birthday. So I just wanted to say happy birthday, Sarah. It is another trip around the sun. I do have to, before we get into the actual interview, one more thing. I do have to issue a trigger warning for, I would say, literally everything possible. I will put it up on a slide, all of the things that are actually in the video, but this video might be triggering to a lot of you. And of course, I want you to take your mental health seriously. I think that is really important. So this might not be the video for you, and I understand that. But if you're ever up to it again to come back to this video, you might even have to take breaks while watching this video. But if you ever want to come back to it when you're in a better mental state, or if it's maybe not as triggering to you in the future, I really hope that you can give Sarah a chance to tell her story. But again, the next slide before we get into the interview will have every single trigger or content warning that I could possibly have for this video. But yeah, so let's just get into it. I know that you were obviously on the episode of Dr. Phil with me, and we didn't say what cults or MLMs that we were a part of, so I kind of just wanted you to go ahead and talk about the cult that you were a part of. I guess the episode said how long you were in it, but I just want you to kind of tell your story. How did you get involved with it? A little bit more about the cult, because as we've been discussing, I don't know anything about this cult. It's the first time I'm ever hearing of it. And if you want to share anything, any kind of backlash that you've gotten from people, or anything like that. So you can go ahead and just start off with introducing yourself, and then just telling your story.
Well, thank you so much, Monica. Yeah, so my name is Sarah, and as you know, and probably as everyone who watched that episode of Dr. Phil knows, I got recruited into that cult in 2009 from Vancouver. And at the time, it seemed like a really mainstream, credible organization. There were people who attended from all walks of life, predominantly successful people from the local business community. It was on one of the main streets, so a highly visible presence in the city. And the leader of that cult, who I couldn't really name on Dr. Phil, but I've named all over YouTube and Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, he calls himself Nithyananda. And I don't say his name is Nithyananda because it's not. That's a persona he has adopted kind of as a front for his abuse. It's a very high level of mystical abuse that goes on in that place. And I would differentiate that from the sort of mind control and abuse that goes on in a political cult or more of an MLM or a business cult. So I think pretty much all of us are familiar now with something like Nexium, where Keith Raniere lured people in under the guise of self-improvement and becoming successful as an executive. I think their first program was called like Executive Success Training. Where that's different from mystical abuse is that they revered him as allegedly the world's smartest man, whereas the fraud I followed claimed to be the only living incarnation of complete universal energy. And he claimed to be Lord Shiva in human form, which for Shaivite Hindus, this is the highest form of existence. This is their God. And mystical abuse, I personally feel, is much more all-encompassing than an emotional intellectual abuse that ends on kind of the human level, because when somebody recognizes in an executive or a boss or somebody of an authority figure that things are not good, while it might be difficult to speak out and leave because they've made some kind of a commitment or they're invested in the training, when somebody, you know, implying that they are God abuses us, we always have that feeling of he knows better than I do. You know, why would I question his actions when I'm a mere human being? I'm just a mere mortal, and this is a living God. So from the very beginning, when I entered that place, and what I started to touch on Dr. Phil, but they kind of cut it so I didn't get to elaborate, is that everything in the beginning was justified and explained away as a cultural barrier and the difference between Western belief and Hindu tradition. And, you know, interestingly, I mentioned things that struck me as odd in the beginning. Dr. Phil asked, like, were there things that seemed a little bit weird to you? And coming from a Western Catholic upbringing, it did seem weird to me that people were kissing the sandals of this guru. And of course, that was explained as Hindu tradition. Now, I don't think it's wrong for people to venerate the padukas of their guru if it's a genuine initiated member of the parampara. And I know this is a lot of weird Sanskrit terminology. So just like Hinduism 101, in India, there are institutions that exist, that have existed for thousands of years, where the teacher passes on to the student the techniques and the teachings of enlightenment. And these come from the ancient Vedic scriptures, the Upanishads, I think there are thousands of different source books. So it's a little different from the West, where we have the Bible or the Torah or the Quran. They've got tons of them. But in an actual lineage, there will be somebody who has been kind of like the torch has been passed from predecessor to inheritor. And that is somebody who will be venerated by their community because they are bringing the teachings. And for example, in Hinduism, if you go visit your grandparents, out of respect, you touch their feet, not because you see them as gods incarnate and you're beneath them. It's just what you do. It's kind of like here, you might hug them. So it's not bad or weird that people were interacting like this with the padukas or with the sandals. What was bad is that the same way they would explain genuine Hindu practices to us, they would also start to normalize and justify abuse. And so anytime something went on, for example, when the guru started to beat disciples, they would say, this is Hinduism. You're just looking at it through dirty Western logic. Remember when you thought revering the padukas was weird? This is no different. And so they would do things that really are part of Hindu tradition. And we would feel a little silly for having misinterpreted those things in the beginning. But then they would do things that are completely abusive and culty and bad. And we didn't know any better. And we felt like we were wrong to question it. We were wrong to judge it. And this is how the sexual abuse got normalized. This is how the push for constant fundraising was normalized. There was always some kind of parable that they could draw on from Hindu culture to justify and explain away the things that were problematic. So it's not like I walked in and immediately saw him molest a child, beat somebody up, kill a dog, and I thought, oh, okay, this is good. It happened so gradually that by the time bad things were happening, I was already completely mind controlled, and I had turned off my personal sense of intuition and moral compass in favor of the superimposed, go with it, it's Hinduism, you don't know anything, which is what he wanted us to feel. So I'm sorry if I've kind of gone off on a tangent.
No. I find all this very interesting, and I think it's important because, I mean, obviously when we're on the show, there's time constraints and everything. So you sometimes can't get everything that you want to get out into the world and to kind of educate people on this cult. So I'm really glad that you were able to talk about that and clarify that so that people can kind of understand that it's not that, you know, it's weird or anything like that with, you know, like kissing the sandals and everything. That's just part of their culture. And I think that that's important for people to know that it's not that, you know, it's just weird in general. It was just different when it first happened because of, like I said, the culture. So I guess my second kind of question to you would be, when did things kind of take a turn? And if you are able to talk about this legally and everything, because I, you know, don't want any trouble for you. When did things kind of take a turn, or I guess when did you start noticing that this is no longer just, you know, just, when did you notice that it turned more into a cult and that it was a little bit more dangerous? And what happened to kind of get you to that point?
Yeah, well, I feel like I was not cult informed when I went in. So there were red flags all along that if I had been familiar with the work of Rick Allen Ross or Dr. Stephen Hassan, I would have gotten out of there way sooner. It's kind of like these are two questions. Like one question is, when did it start feeling uncomfortable and depressing and bad? And when did I realize that it's not right to be in a place that feels uncomfortable, depressing, and bad? Because as soon as I took the vow, the vow of what's called sannyas, which is like the monastic Hindu commitment to a life of being like a Hindu nun, that was when the honeymoon phase ended, the love bombing came to an abrupt halt, and he started treating me like a slave, which is how I've heard others in his lineage describe that treatment. Before somebody takes this vow, and it's very similar to Scientology, where they sign a billion-year contract, we had to sign something stating that for the next 10,000 lifetimes, or infinitely, if this is our last lifetime, we will serve him on a conscious space. Like our life and all of our future lifetimes exist only to serve him. And so that was part of the vow we took. And until somebody has taken that vow, he will make them feel special. He'll make them feel like their whole life existed to lead them to him, and that he will support them in doing whatever it takes to become free of all external attachments, so career, family, obligations, so that they can take that vow. And he makes it seem like unless you take that vow of sannyas, you can never be enlightened. I was talking to a friend recently who said that she felt really targeted as a married woman because he said married couples cannot be enlightened. You can only get enlightened if you take the monastic vow. So once I took the vow, life got extremely difficult because then it was no longer a suggestion that we sleep a minimum or a maximum of 2 hours a night. It was the rule. He controlled our diet. He controlled everything about our daily routine from the time we got up at 3 in the morning until we went to bed at like 1 o'clock the next morning. Everything was we couldn't do anything without his instruction or his approval. So that's when I started to feel like, up until then, I thought the biggest blessing in my life was meeting a living enlightened master and getting the teachings directly from an authentic source. And it felt so mystical and wonderful to be a part of this great thing that's going to bring enlightenment to the world. Once I was there, I felt really trapped. And I thought, I wish I could go back to being an outside devotee who talks about his teachings on YouTube and who reads his books and who does the meditations, and it all feels good. And if I had known that this is how constrictive the lifestyle would be, I wouldn't have moved here. I wouldn't have given up my business, given up the lease on my dream apartment, and moved physically to a place where we get yelled at all day, every day, and the entire community exists kind of like, imagine there's like a classroom full of bad kids and the teacher says your only job is to tattle on each other. That's kind of how it felt. The entire community is in surveillance of each other, waiting for you to do something out of line so they can report you for inauthenticity or not living up to the so-called guru vak, which is what he tells you to do. So it became culty the moment I took that vow and moved there physically, but I didn't know that that's how cults operate. I didn't know that the crazy diet restrictions that were getting worse and worse every day followed the same example Jim Jones had used in Jonestown leading up to the mass suicide. If I had known that, I would have known that's a red flag. I just thought it sucks that now we can't eat carrots anymore. And it sucks that now we can't eat anything that's not grown originally in South India. It felt to me like I had an issue with the attachment to the stuff that was getting taken away. I didn't see the issue as he's restricting our freedom, he's restricting our sleep, he's forcing us to do an all liquid diet. I felt like I'm not good enough because I'm not adapting to this lifestyle as quickly as I thought I would. And I think this is the problem a lot of cult members have, is that there's so much shaming and self-blaming that goes on. We are forced to kind of police ourselves and brainwash ourselves because we're told everybody else is doing this easily. If you have a problem with it, you are not surrendered enough. You're not chaste enough to the lifestyle. And so when things came up that I didn't like, I blamed myself for not liking them. And again, like he would use the words dirty Western logic. It's your dirty Western logic that thinks you should be eating more protein, or it's your dirty Western logic that thinks you need more sleep. So I didn't realize that all the things he was doing were horribly abusive until really synchronistically, I had to come home to renew my visa. And while I was sitting in my mom's living room, waiting for my Indian visa to get approved, Scientology in the Aftermath came on, and it was a marathon of that show. I started watching it because Nithyananda praises L. Ron Hubbard. He says L. Ron Hubbard is a modern day rishi. He's the reincarnation of an enlightened character from Vedic history. He told us Scientology does a lot of good for humanity and that it is a Western equivalent of the Guru Parampara. So he has always been very pro Scientology. So in my naivete, I saw Scientology in the Aftermath and I thought, oh, I should watch this because Swamiji would like it. He likes Scientology. Let's find out what more it's about. So it wasn't too far into the first episode I was watching that I realized, oh, wait a minute. Yeah, this is not favorable to the lifestyle of Scientology. And since it was a marathon, it was kind of like every single episode reinforced the fact that this is not a good way to treat people. So Leah Remini was interviewing people who had been excommunicated and shunned for leaving the community. And I thought, wow, that happens in Nithyananda Sangha too. If somebody leaves, we are told don't talk to them. They are dangerous. They're a guru drohi. They are trying to take away your consciousness. So yeah, that happens. She interviewed people who had been in the RPF, which is like the hard labor punishment camp for Scientologists who don't do what the leadership tells them to do. And I thought, oh my God, that's identical to the Sacred Arts campus. If somebody doesn't make it to morning yoga on time, or if somebody doesn't make all the social media posts our ex-guru instructed, he would send them to do something called prayaschita, which is a Sanskrit word that he has corrupted. Originally, it means sitting with yourself in a meditative state to reflect on where you are not authentic so you can realign yourself. So it's a good thing, but the way he uses it is very abusive. So he'll send somebody to a manual labor camp where 22 hours a day they're carrying bricks, eating even less food than the rest of us, not allowed to wear the sari or the dhoti. They have to wear what looks like a prison outfit, like dirty orange pajamas. And they're not allowed to talk to the people in the main campus. It's identical to the RPF. Maybe even a little bit worse than the RPF, because there's also this mystical implication where the person feels like now they can never realize enlightenment. So watching Scientology in the Aftermath, that was kind of when I made the connection that all of these things that have made me feel uncomfortable with Nithyananda are valid. It's not my dirty Western logic that is putting conditions on the master that it's not my place to put. This is just how a rationally thinking human being recognizes abuse. And I looked at my mom, who was kind of sitting there in awkward silence as I'm watching this show, and I told her, I think I'm in a cult. And she said, yeah, I think you are. And I went to my old bedroom, and luckily she had kept some of my clothes from when I was younger. And I took off the orange sari and just put on jeans and a t-shirt. And I sent a message to a lady named Ranjita, who is Nithyananda's head of administration. And I told her, I'm not coming back. I saw a program called Scientology in the Aftermath. It details what a cult is, and everything that you are doing in that place is wrong. People shouldn't be sleep deprived. People shouldn't be denied food. People shouldn't be shunned when they leave. It's wrong. And within 2 minutes, Nithyananda himself sent me a private message in Facebook saying, blessings, dear, I'm so sorry we're losing you. I never imagined you would be a failure in your sannyas. This has come as a shock. I'm very sad right now, but you have my blessings. I hope you have a beautiful life in the West. It's only too bad you're not going to fulfill your mission. And I thought, oh no, like maybe I was too harsh to jump to conclusions. Maybe the organization is run like a cult, but that's because he brought the wrong people in. So I still had enough mind control infecting my brain that I recognized the organization is culty, but I thought maybe it's because he brought the wrong people in to lead his organization. So I started to say, Swamiji, which is what we all called him, it's not that I want to leave and be a failure in my sannyas, it's that I'm not okay with sleep deprivation, and I'm not okay with people being forced to do things that they don't want to do. Prayaschita should be optional. It shouldn't be a punishment to people. And he started telling me, well, dear, if you leave, all of these things that are wrong in our community will continue to be wrong. Why don't you come back and change it? Why don't you come back and you design the sleep schedule? You come back and you design prayaschita. So he made me feel as if I leave, everyone in his organization will continue to live kind of a suppressed cult lifestyle, but that he would empower me to make these changes. And I believed he meant it, because I didn't yet recognize that he was the mastermind pulling the strings of everything that was going wrong. And I feel like people won't really understand that unless they've lived it. It's kind of like when you are brainwashed by a cult leader, you believe that individual is infallible and perfect, and they've given you enough quote unquote mystical experiences. And whether this is through something like hypnosis, or whether we had actual experiences and he took credit for them where he shouldn't have, I don't really know. But a lot of us did believe that he gave us visions and feelings of bliss and Kundalini awakenings. So it was easier for me at that time to believe he's innocent here. His group is running itself like a cult. He's giving me the freedom to come in and change it. This is great. So against my better, advice from my mom, who said, no, you shouldn't go back. What makes you think it's going to change now? Are you really the only one who's ever had a problem with this stuff? I did go back, and in the short term, he made it seem like he was making changes as per my suggestions. So he gave an instruction from now on, everyone has to sleep for 8 hours a night. And that sounded great. But there's a caveat, unless you've attained the space where you no longer need sleep. And there was kind of a browbeating given to anybody who took the full 8 hours that he now pretended to give us the liberty to take. So everyone was still sleep deprived, but he could save face and claim, well, I said you could sleep 8 hours. If you've chosen not to, that's on you. And yet it's not really, because everyone knows you will be considered inferior if you take that extra sleep time. So it wasn't long before I kind of realized, even though he invited me back and said I could make changes in the structure, that's just a false promise he made because he didn't want to lose me. And the position he had given me in the cult was kind of like the stage presence. I was the one making videos to recruit people from around the world. Anytime there was a program, I had to get up on stage to give the discourses and make the introductions. So he knew if I left, it would create waves in the organization, because people knew I was very committed. I wouldn't just leave for no reason. And so he gave me an assignment that I'm laughing now. It was a mind fuck at the time. Sorry, I hope I can say that.
No, you're totally fine.
So he gave me the assignment to prove that he's running a culture, not a cult. He told me do research about cults, find out what we do that's different, and make videos about it. And it was so difficult because in my research, everything cults do, he was doing. There was nothing different. There was only one singular difference I could find, and that's that most cults will not allow their members to go on social media and interact with non-cult members. He encouraged it because that's how he recruits. And so it's kind of like, yeah, he allows us access to social media, but first he tells all of us, everybody you meet and talk to who's not a member of our organization is brainwashed by the Maya matrix, which is what he referred to as the entire world outside of his cult. So people are allowed to interact with non-cult members, but they see themselves as superior to non-cult members. It's like, oh yeah, you have these doubts and these questions. That's because you aren't privy to the higher consciousness we have. So it's a filtered view of the world. Every interaction goes through the filter of, yeah, but I'm a Bahuputri. I'm one of the chosen ones of existence who's connected to this great avatar. So it was hard for me to kind of succeed in this task he had given to me to prove it's not a cult, because all of my research reinstated that it definitely is a cult. And kind of my wake-up call moment happened when he fled the country of India to escape a rape case. And we were all told, she made it up, he's innocent, he never touched her. But the head of his legal team had given me a court transcript that they only had a printed version of. They wanted a typed version, and I'm a really fast typer. So she said, can you just quickly type this up? And as I was reading through it, my heart sank a little, because his rape victim, Arti Rao, had outlined all the things he said to her when he started sexually abusing her. One of the lines said, as he was kissing her and touching her, he told her, our relationship is not physical. And verbatim, that's what he said to me once when he was first starting to sexually abuse me. And I thought, oh my God, she's telling the truth. Because this happened 10 years earlier. It's not like she heard that this is what he says to people. Oh my God, Arti Rao is right. And that's when I started to kind of unravel all the layers of misinformation we were given and consider the reason he ran away and left India is that he knows if this goes to trial, he will lose. An innocent person doesn't run from justice. An innocent person fights to vindicate themselves. And at that point in time, I felt very uneasy. I locked myself in my bedroom in the ashram and stopped going to the morning yoga and the daily routine. I stopped talking to people because I felt like if they find out that I know this, I could be in danger. People have been killed in that place for wanting to leave. And I feel like the best thing that ever happened to me was that I was instructed to go to Toronto with the ridiculous mission of meeting Prime Minister Trudeau and convincing him to give Nithyananda political asylum. So first and foremost, this is how stupid the administration is there. Like, Canada's government is centered in Ottawa. Sending me to Toronto to do this would be like sending somebody to San Jose to make it in Hollywood. Like, it's a different place. There's hundreds of miles between them. When I got to Toronto, there were two kids who were also staying in the house where all the devotees stayed. And they were told to demonstrate the powers of the third eye to local government officials to prove that he's a living incarnation and that he's given them these special third eye powers. And one day those kids came to me crying and said, we can't do this anymore. The powers are fake. We're peeking through holes in the blindfold. We're making things up when we do Akashic readings. And rather than react, I just let them talk. And I asked them, well, why do you keep going along with it and faking it? And the little girl asked me, are you given approval to talk to Gurukul kids, which is, Gurukul is like the residential school. And I did have that approval. So I said, yes. And she said, well, we have to fake it because we don't want another December 31st incident. And I asked her what that was. And she outlined a horrific beating. Every single child in that school was beaten and forced to beat each other until they bled and cried. And afterwards, they were locked up behind like a cage in front of their school until the bruises and the swelling and the welts healed. And the adults were told the kids are doing their completion process, leave them alone, they're maturing beyond you. Adults were always made to feel like the kids are higher level incarnations than the grown-ups, and that's why they were blessed to come into children's bodies around the master. So none of the grown-ups questioned it. We just thought, okay, well, the kids are doing their own process, good for them, we'll give them space. Little did we know they were violently assaulted, and their bruises would have been a dead giveaway that something was wrong. So that night in Toronto, when the kids told me about the beatings, I said to another lady there who was a retired school principal, she has a doctorate in psychology. She was also part of the team sent to get political asylum for Nithyananda. I said to her, we have to do something. We have to call Child Protective Services. We have to call the police. And at first she agreed. And she said, yeah, this is wrong. This, even like, we can't justify it. There's no justification for it. But another lady who had been listening in from a bedroom kind of adjacent to where we were came into our main room and took my cell phone out of my hand and said, are you seriously considering committing guru droha, which is abusing the master or abusing the guru? In our cult, that was considered like a crime worse than murder. Like, that is the ultimate sin, is guru droha. And that lady told me, if you really want what's best for these kids, don't go to Child Protective Services, report it to admin, which is Ranjita, the head secretary to Niti. So I sent her a private message and said, I'm very disturbed right now because the kids told me about the December 31st incident and we don't know how to help them. And she replied back immediately, gaslighting me and said, what are you talking about? I don't know what December 31st means. Meanwhile, I knew she knew because the kids told me that she had intervened in the school and brought in a new teacher after that incident took place. So I pretended to be ignorant and said, they felt like they got hurt that day. I didn't tell her the extent of what they had told me because now I'm scared. I don't want her to know how much I know. And she said, don't worry about it. We'll take care of them. These kids are gods and goddesses, and we would never let them be hurt. And the next morning, before I woke up at about 5 a.m., they were in a taxi on their way to the Toronto airport. They were flown back to India. And that's when I knew I have to leave. Because if these kids had really been making something up, or if they had exaggerated the abuse, they wouldn't have been immediately removed from the place where they can tell an adult who has sympathy for them and compassion. So I spoke with the lady who owned the house where we were staying and told her, I've been sexually abused by Nithyananda, and kids have been beaten in his gurukul, and I don't feel safe. I have to leave. And she had helped me by putting some Western style clothes in my closet and making sure I'd have a ride to the airport. And we kind of worked it out among ourselves that I would pretend I had to stay back at the house to work while everyone else went to the temple on the day I booked a flight back to my hometown. And yeah, that day I just took off the orange clothes, put on jeans and a t-shirt, went to the airport and flew home. And I felt free for the first time in years, but I also felt burdened by the knowledge that I'm leaving so many people behind in this frightening place where kids are getting beaten and rights are being restricted and people disappear if they ask too many questions. So for months, I felt really scared and really conflicted. In retrospect, that's when I should have gone to a licensed therapist or somebody who deals with cult survivors. But very similarly to Scientology and to NXIVM, we had been kind of brainwashed to believe that mental health professionals have an agenda and that they're manipulative and they just want you to feel like you're sick so that you'll keep paying them to make you better. So I didn't know who I could trust. And that's very unfortunate. That's part of the reason I'm so public now about my experiences, is that I feel like probably a lot of people who leave groups like this don't know that they can actually trust the professionals who are here to help them. But yeah, after about a year of gaining my courage and getting comfortable with the idea that if I speak out, this cult will attack me. It's not a question of if, it's a question of how badly. I finally went public. And the day I went public was September 11th of 2019. And it's because the day before, on September 10th, 5 of my friends who had also left the organization were falsely accused of being drug traffickers by the cult. So a lady named Manyanatma, who's the head of Nithyananda's programs team, put out a weird message on Facebook saying, these 5 people have been found to be drug traffickers. They were using the ashram to make connections and they were smuggling illegal materials. Well, one of those friends was one of the male sexual abuse victims of the guru. And I knew that because he had opened up and confided in me. Another one of those friends was very, prominent high-end New York businessman who left the organization when he found out about the children beatings. And he was kind of talking to all of us behind the scenes to say, when the time is right and you go public, I'll be here to help. One of the ladies accused of drug trafficking was the mother of one of the Gurukul kids who spoke out about the beatings. So all the people being accused of drug trafficking are victims who have been kind of talking behind the scenes about how we can help other people leave. And I knew if I don't speak out first, the next time they make one of these statements, I'll be falsely accused of drug trafficking. So I felt like, for one, I wanted to defend my friends because I know they're innocent and that this is being made up as retaliation against them to stop current cult members from listening to what they have to say. And also, I'm not going to wait for them to hit first. I better come out with what I know so that when they do falsely accuse me of something, people will understand they are retaliating against me for telling the truth, not the other way around. So yeah, on September 11th of 2019, I made a Facebook post saying, over the last year, I've kind of, as you mentioned it when you left the MLM, at first you kind of sugarcoat it. Mm-hmm. So for a year, I had been sugarcoating my reason for leaving and saying, it no longer felt like it was my path. I felt this was time to move on. And now I'm ready to tell the real reason I left, which is that it's a cult. I was brainwashed. I'm not anymore. And by the way, kids told me they got horrifically beaten, and that's not right. And within 24 hours, members of the cult falsely accused me of sexual assault. One boy and one girl accused me of sexually assaulting them. I was accused of attempted assassination. They said I tried to kill the guru by feeding him poison. They claimed that I was a member of the Illuminati, which is just ridiculous for other reasons. Like I'm a tarot reader, crystal healer from Canada. Like I'm not elite in any way. They accused me of being a Vatican paid spy who had been sent to destroy Hinduism. So just all kinds of crazy false accusations that have only escalated since I've continued to speak out. So now they've accused me of being a rapist, of keeping somebody as a sex slave. They've said that whoever I've interviewed on my YouTube channel, they've done so because I pay them $1 million each to go against the guru. And it's like, if I had that kind of money, would I still have an Etsy shop? Like, come on. Right?
Fair point.
Yeah. So yeah, it's really, it's really unfortunate that a group like this, if you find out about the crimes it commits and you speak out, they will never address the actual points that I've made publicly. They're not talking about the Gurukul students and whether or not these kids were beaten. They're not talking about the sleep deprivation or the missing people, the mysterious deaths that took place in the cult, or why the guru fled a rape case if he's innocent, which they claim he is. Why did he run away then? They're not addressing any of that. They're just taking out a smear campaign against me because they don't want people to listen to the points I'm making. And I feel like if you want to know which side is telling the truth, which side is giving facts, and which side is just trying to smear the character of the other side. And it's, yeah, that's behavior we see in every cult. Like when the whistleblower Susan Dones had spoken out against Keith Raniere, they called her crazy. When Tony Natali spoke out against Keith Raniere, they called her crazy and hit her with countersuits. So this is the behavior that a predatory group with lots of money and lots of power does when it wants to silence somebody who's exposing them.
Yeah, so I know that I think on Dr. Phil, it said that you were a part of the cult for 9 years, was it? Okay, okay. Wow, that is a lot.
Yeah, I feel like I've
Oh,
yeah.
no. It's no. I feel like you answered a lot of questions and you hit a lot of just points as to just to talk about the cult in general and the fact that you got all of that backlash. I know that we've already talked about this, but for people that are watching this video, it does remind me of Scientology and it reminds me of fair gaming, which we also talked about privately. But that's really what it reminds me of, and it just I can't believe that they would go off and just have this entire smear campaign. I mean, I know why they would do it because they want the cult to look good in the eyes of the public, but I feel as though just accusing you of so many things that are just terrible things. That's just scary. I think what I'm trying to say is that it's just scary to see how just indoctrinated they really are into this cult, and just how, not necessarily how far gone that they are, but it's scary to see what these people would do for their leader. And that's why I'm so thankful that you're speaking out, and I'm so happy that I was able to meet you through the Dr. Phil episode that we did, because yeah, your story is just it's very interesting to listen to. I mean, of course, it's also very sad to listen to, but the fact that you're able to sit here and publicly talk about what went on, even with all of the backlash and all of the lies that are being spread about you, yeah, that takes a lot of courage. So it really truly does. And the fact that they were trying to say that, you're part of the Illuminati and
Yeah, that was one of the more absurd claims they made.
yeah, I can't believe that.
Yeah, no, it's ridiculous. And they call me a white supremacist and say that I'm trying to destroy Hinduism. And that's why it's a little unfortunate the way the Dr. Phil episode was edited, that it made it sound like I'm against revering Guru Padukas. I'm not. It's just that was one of the things that initially I questioned. And when that was explained away or put into context as Hindu, it made us less likely to question the things that are not legitimately Hindu. So yeah, they call me an anti-Hindu. They say that they blame me for cultural genocide. They say, Sarah Landry she has Catholic school teacher ancestors, therefore her family committed the atrocities against the Canadian First Nations people in the residential schools, which is really, really crazy. And, for people who don't know, the residential school issue in Canada is the most horrific item in the news at this time. Like, there were kids who were, I would say, kidnapped from their families and forced to go to schools that indoctrinated them into Western culture. So they were beaten if they spoke their ancestral languages. A lot of kids died because of the neglect, the beatings, and the mistreatment in those residential schools, and they were buried in unmarked mass graves. So it's the most terrible, shocking, sad, criminal thing that historically has come to light in recent times. And obviously, the kids and the families who were affected by this deserve to be, I don't know what could ever be done to make up for the crimes that were committed against those peoples. But using their pain to try to attack a whistleblower who is speaking out against kids getting beaten in a residential school, to me, is the ultimate irony.
Mhm.
I've come forward not because I'm anti-Hindu, I'm pro-Hindu. I love Hinduism. I still have deities up in my place, and that's neither here nor there. That's just where my heart lies. But accusing me of being responsible for residential school atrocities that happened before I was born and that my family had no link to. My mom was a Catholic school teacher, my granddad was a Catholic school teacher, but this shit happened before either of their ancestors even lived in this part of the country. So it's just really crazy to me that this cult will take anything that they can get their hands on that sounds bad and accuse whistleblowers of doing that. And like you said, it shows just how far gone the members are if they believe it. It's really mind-boggling to me that, people who I knew when I was in India, do they actually think that I'm capable of those kinds of crimes? And what's interesting is that they don't. I have friends who have left very recently who said, Sarah, when we were told to make up these stories about you, we knew on one level that what we were doing was wrong. Nobody believes I'm a rapist, even in the cult, but they believed that they had to say that I was because it was their guru vak. And one of the things the kids were told, just for the record, I'm not the only person who has been falsely accused of rape who has spoken out against this cult. It's kind of their MO. They do it whenever somebody comes out. When my friend Jordan started telling people about the guru trying to sexually assault him, he was given a message that if you go public with this, they already have a kid ready to falsely accuse him of rape. So it's just what they do. But even they don't believe what they're saying. They just think they have to do it. And what the kids are told, like the kids who falsely accuse journalists who have written articles against Nithyananda of raping them. One girl gave a very elaborate story of being gang raped while going for a walk. And she named all of the alleged rapists, and they're journalists, they're political leaders who are against Nithyananda, as if all of these men all just happened to be in that place at that time. It's a completely obviously fake story. But what these kids are told is that all of the people you're calling a rapist, they really did rape a child, but that child has been forced into silence. The parents don't believe them. Nobody will defend them. So you saying that he did this to you, be in the space of Advaita, be in the space of oneness with their actual victim. And then the kids are given horrific details of what happened to the other kid. And when they start to cry because they feel so sorry for the made up victim, that's when the camera comes on and they tell the rape story. And I've heard this from kids who were in the Gurukul when they were forced to make up these stories. I've also heard it from one of the adults who witnessed it. And that's why it sounds so believable, because they're told it's a very weird kind of child sexual abuse when a child is made to visualize themselves getting raped and then tell the story as if it actually happened. So it's just, there are so many layers of abuse going on that I look forward to the day it's exposed in a much larger public platform. I feel like I'm grateful for our Dr. Phil experience. It's great that we got to open up in a mainstream platform about the craziness that we've experienced, but it didn't even scratch the surface. It was kind of like the difference between silently waving at somebody and then having a conversation with somebody.
Yeah, I definitely would have to agree with you on that, because there was a portion of mine that I just filmed my I was on Dr. Phil video yesterday, and I talked about it in there, that there was a portion that was cut out that I thought was really important to. It's not that anything was taken out of context or anything like that, but I think that that portion would have just kind of shown a little bit more into, yeah, it was something that I thought should have been talked about. So I put it in my video because I thought it was just important to get out into the world. And yeah, I feel as though it's just like you said, it just scratched the surface. It didn't, there's just so much more to the story, which is why I wanted to invite you on my channel, because I feel like you really had, just listening to your story while we were there, and then of course watching the episode back and everything was, yeah, I couldn't believe that it's not that I couldn't believe that something like that existed. It's just the way that you spoke about the abuse and everything that happened. And I mean, just the fact that they were doing really horrible things, not just to adults, but to children, that just really breaks my heart, because these are children. They don't know any better. They're innocent little beings. And I can't wrap my head around how someone could do things like this to adults and to children. Yeah.
I mean, like you'd have to do a deep dive into the psychology of a narcissist and the psychology of somebody who is psychopathic. Like I've looked up the traits that they would use kind of to give a diagnosis of psychopathy, and Nithyananda has all of them. And so there's a sort of a solipsism that these characters have. They don't consider other people to be real and to have feelings and goals and aspirations and senses of pain. To a narcissist like that, to somebody who is completely sociopathic and psychopathic, people are just means to an end. Like the way we might pick up a pencil and write, and if it breaks, we'll throw it away. That's how they use people. So to us, it's horrifying to consider that kids got beaten. To somebody like Nithyananda, it's horrifying to consider kids are disobeying him. It's like there's a certain like lack of recognition of the sovereignty of other humans that exists in these characters. And I think that's why cult leaders are so unapologetic. They don't realize that what they're doing is wrong. And I'm not justifying what they're doing. It's sickening, and he should be in prison forever. But the reason you'll never get an apology from them, the reason they'll character assassinate you if you speak out, is that they think they are the only one in the world that matters. And anything that disagrees with them is inherently bad, because they have the sole right to everything. And this is what you see in Keith Raniere, and what you like. You mentioned offline you haven't seen The Vow yet. I think you really have to watch The Vow, because
Yeah.
yeah, it shows just how far gone he was. Like a woman he claimed he loved was in her deathbed in her own feces, And he didn't help her, call an ambulance, do anything. He just left and asked somebody else to cook him breakfast. And later he said, oh, by the way, she needs some help in there. So these kinds of pathological narcissists, they just don't empathize with other people. So we see a child get beaten, we want to jump in and stop that abuse. They order it and they don't care. They lack that basic human empathy, which makes them so dangerous. You mentioned it's brave for me to keep speaking out, and thank you for that. But I also feel like I have no choice. I have to, because somebody has to. And I had mentioned the parallel with Jonestown, that the diet kept getting further restricted. The access to speaking to the outside world kept getting more restricted. It really frightens me that Nithyananda has already told his disciples, suicide is wrong, but if you kill yourself to protect your guru, that's not suicide, that's sacrifice, that's surrender, that's okay. So he's already trying to normalize the concept that it's okay for them to kill themselves for him. He said, if you kill for your guru, that's not murder, that's seva. If you die for your guru, that's not suicide, that's sacrifice. And he's told people that if he's ever arrested again and put back in prison, they should do a hunger strike until they die if he's not released. And that they should, there was one man who told me that he was personally instructed by Nithyananda to self-immolate outside the prison cell if he's ever arrested again. So he's ready to tell people, set yourself on fire and burn to death for me. So he needs to be stopped. I don't want to see all these people who I once considered my friends, my spiritual family, die because this crazy fraud has convinced them that that is their dharma, like that's their path in life. It really isn't. Nobody should ever live to serve another human being. So
Yeah, I don't know if you have anything else that you would like to add, because I didn't have to ask you any questions. You just I think that yeah, just saying all of these things. I'm definitely going to go ahead and dive a little bit deeper into the cult and just learn a little bit more about it, but I think that you gave so much good information. So if you have anything else that you would like to add, yeah, just if you have anything else that you'd like to add, by all means, go right ahead.
well, I think I covered the main fears that I have of where this cult could go if it's left unchecked. There is a docuseries on Discovery Plus called My Daughter Joined a Cult that gives a very brief backstory about the cult. It's again scratches the surface, but at least it's something. So if people are interested in who Nithyananda is and what he's done, that's a good intro. I recently launched a website that's sarahlandry.ca, where I've compiled all the news stories about him, all the media coverage of his crimes, and also all the podcasts and interviews I've given since coming public. So people can check that out if they're interested. But that's about it. I think we've done a good intro, at least here.
Yeah, so where can people go ahead and find you? I know that I'm going to put this in the intro, but in case someone misses it in the intro, if you just want to say where people can find you, let us know what your Etsy shop is. Everything will be linked below in the description box. But if you just want to go ahead and say, just let people know where they can find you.
Sure. Well, thank you for that. So my website is sarahlandry.ca. And I'm on pretty much every social media platform except TikTok because I'm a millennial. So I've got Twitter, I'm at Sarah_S_Landry. On Instagram, I'm at _the_art_of_gems_. My Etsy shop is called The Art of Gems. And yeah, etsy.com/shop/art of gems, the art of gems. And I'll give your viewers the same 11% discount I give my viewers if you want. They can
Oh, yeah.
use the coupon code 1111, which is spelled the word ELEVEN and then the numbers 11. And I'll send you that in a message in case
Okay.
you'd like to share.
Yeah,
Cool.
sounds good. All right, so I guess if you don't have anything else that you would like to add to this intro of the cult that you survived, yeah, I just want to say thank you for speaking out. I know that you said that someone has to do it, but it takes a lot of courage, especially with all of the lies that have been spread about you and just how you've been attacked. So I just want to say thank you for speaking out and trying to save the people that are still in the cult and to save them from the abuse and just the mind control and all of that. So like I said, if do you have anything else to add or?
No, but thank you. And I'm
Okay.
sorry, I don't mean to say this was just an I think this was more of an overview. I appreciate you
Yeah.
opening the platform and letting me get into the deeper stuff that we couldn't really talk about on Dr. Phil. That's really cool of you.
Yeah.
And likewise, I'd like to invite you to an interview on my channel. I would love to
Absolutely.
hear, yeah, both of your MLM experiences, because you're also brave and you are also doing a service to help save others from falling into the financial pit that you had fallen into, and to, you know, give people the critical thinking skills they need to understand the difference between a credible business and an MLM that's going to just drain their resources.
Yeah.
So you're doing it too, and thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you. So, okay, I guess that'll wrap up the video. And to anyone who is watching this, all of Sarah's links will be in the description box below. And thank you so much for coming on my channel. And everyone go ahead and check out her YouTube channel, which will also be linked below, so that you can learn a little bit more about her story, because I know that you have a lot of videos on your channel. So, and then of course the docuseries. So thank you so much. That is the end of the interview with Sarah. Thank you so much to all of you who watched all the way through or just watched a little bit of it to kind of get a gist of her story and just to hear her out, because I think it's really important to talk about the cult that she was in, because I mean, I might sound dumb saying this, but I have never heard of this cult before. This is the first time I'm ever hearing of it. So thank you so much for watching. Thank you to Sarah for coming on and telling her story, and I will see you guys next time. This is Monica reporting to you live from a highway. Bye!